We all knew that there was a high risk that we weren't going to be making it back alive.
The US loadmaster looked over and basically saw the ground.
The next thing that happened was the Black Horse smashed into the ground at over 200 k's an hour.
Gary sustained significant and critical injuries.
Most of the passengers were flung out along the way.
It was really touch and go with Gary. When they came to notify me, they were preparing for a bereavement notification. They didn't think he'd make it.
Half my body was broken and like just shattered.
I think Gary was probably the most banged up of them all. My personal view was that it wasn't good.
They said once they'd found me, I must have realised that I was secure and safe. My body then just collapsed and lapsed into my coma. Like, from as young as I can remember, I knew I wanted to join the army and be part of the military in some way, shape or form. And then the way it all evolved, I dropped out of high school to join the Army Reserve. And then from the Army Reserve, then went to 3-hour, then 3-hour, then to the Signals Corps, and then my language corps, and like I say. So yes, just being part of that military family just attracted me and then became who I was.
It probably wasn't until, I think it was after his first 12 months at the Commando Regiment that it really sort of started to sink in that he was actually going to war. In particular, the Special Forces did it, so they would go into, if they had a quick mission, they would run these joint operations with the US. The US would basically fly them in, drop them off, they'd do their mission, come back, pick them up, take them back.
For me in my job, my biggest fear wasn't that I would die, it was that I would not do my job well enough and one of my team would die. And that burden would then hang on your head for, it's one of those hard things to do with our job.
So on the 21st of June 2010, his platoon boarded their helicopters. There was 4 of them. They were US helicopters, and this wasn't unusual. They did it all the time.
Into my room to grab my equipment. There's a phone in the hallway we can use to call back to Australia. I was like, I'll call back home. No, it's gonna be too late enough. I don't want to wake Renee. So I'll call when I get back. It's gonna be a quick job. It was meant to be a 3-hour mission.
There was what they call red illumination. So absolutely no visibility whatsoever. The night vision didn't really work. So what they had to do was work off their measurements. They had told the team that they were preparing to land, so people started getting ready. At that point, the US loadmaster looked over and basically saw the ground and said, "How low are you taking this, boss?"
The next thing that happened was the Black Horse smashed into the ground at over 200 k's an hour. The aircraft tumbled until it stopped. It was less than 100 metres thereabouts. From 200 to 0 in 100 metres, like, that's a lot of trauma, like just the shock of the body and the tumbling.
From what I understand, the survivors, with the exception of Gary, were basically thrown out along the way as the helicopter was coming in and tumbling. Gary was in it pretty much the entire time, which is why he ended up with the type of brain injury he did, because of the tumbling at quite a velocity. And at the same time, because the helicopter had come in so fast, all of the ammunition was cooking off. So they were dodging, ammunition and bullets and all sorts of stuff from the helicopter that went down.
The 2 Black Hawks had landed, coming rushing forward to treat the Kazovacs and casevac all the patients. They got to the point where I was, and they found me at the wreckage. In a very dazed state, half my body was broken and like just shattered. I was crawling away. They found me trying to crawl out of the wreckage with one arm and one leg, just as best I could. And then The story is, I obviously have no recollection. They said once they found me, they realised that I must have realised that I was secure and safe. My body then just collapsed and lapsed into my coma. I had destroyed my foot. My foot was just flopping around, like the shoe was ripped off and the whole, it was like, as Renee described in Germany, under the x-rays it looked like mincemeat in a sock.
Gary sustained significant and critical injuries. The medic was able to stabilise the critically injured, and they were able to use those remaining helicopters to evacuate back to a hospital.
So the experience of visiting Landstuhl, that was the first lot of casualties that we'd visited outside of the medical support that was provided in Afghanistan, or in fact in the broader Middle East area of operations. And it was quite confronting. And to see Gary with all the hoses and drains, etc., and the medical attention he was receiving was quite confronting at the time. But again, you know, we just had to be there and show the care concern for all of them.
They ensured that we were over there as quickly as possible. They ensured that our time over there was everything that we needed.
So I think Renee is the reason Gary's alive today. We first met, John Campbell and I first met Renee in the ICU ward in Gary's room. She was sitting beside his bed, holding his hand when we first walked in, and Gary was the first one of the casualties that we visited on our arrival. And I think she was a girlfriend at that stage, and I'm not sure of how long they'd been in a relationship, but she was very attentive, and my sense was she was a force of nature.
Don was there for me at a really dark part of the Germany journey. We'd had a really difficult morning with Gary. He was really touch and go, and I just burst into tears, and I just stood there and I cried just in front of everyone. He quite literally swooped in, picked me up, took me around the corner, and he just held me. And he held me until I had calmed. They gave me hope that everything would be okay.
One of the nurses said to Renee that this is going to be a marathon. This isn't a sprint. Like, long-term recovery for brain injury is going to be a long time. And then when Renee came in the next day and I could barely talk, so first thing was, sorry I didn't call.
And the first thing I said to him once they told us that was, I don't want you to worry that you didn't call me. I forgive you. You know, I'm not angry, it's okay.
So my take on Renee was that, you know, she was instrumental in Gary's, not only his survival, but his recovery. And I'd picked up on that through my exposure to them over the years after.
This whole journey has been, obviously, like, it's been quite a long and arduous one, but having Renee by my side the whole way has been my main motivator, my main ass kicker when I have my bad days. She gives me a kick in the bum. She's like, go to the gym or go and train or go do this. And I'm like, okay. And then sure enough, after you train, you feel a lot better.
And then the next low point was when he was discharged. So, you know, the fanfare of getting out of hospital and now being in outpatient, where he had to rely on himself a lot more. Gary had to relearn how to do everything, how to speak, how to walk, how to eat, how to drink.
I had to learn to urinate by myself again so they could remove the catheter. And that shit hurts. His bag, he's in the car. No, wait. There's one down here.
He's a wonderful example of recovery and getting on with your life. And I've never heard Gary whinge ever in my life. And that, I think, is testament to who he is. And Renee probably won't let him whinge anyway.
See you later on.
Yeah, we came across Soldier On, I think it was about 12 months after Gary's accident. And that was mainly because we had experienced so many gaps across the system in that time, as you can imagine.
I just know that on a few occasions when I've been to see the Soldier on Ball, Gary and Renee have been a constant at those events and activities, and I'm aware in the periphery that Soldier On has been very supportive of Gary and Renee, and I know that they've contributed back to the organisation.
So when we saw Soldier On pop up as something sort of more contemporary, as an organisation that, you know, we almost sort of felt an affinity to, and in fact when I spoke to the founder for the first time, I said to him, thank God you did it, because if you didn't, I was going to.
Having like ESOs like come on board like Soldier On, who've been very instrumental in my recovery by like encouraging me to speak and get and share my story, because the more I share my story, the more cathartic it is, and the more it helps me like come to terms with what's happened to me and what I've been through. So
look, I think that organisations like Soldier On, and particularly in Gary and Renee's case, have been very beneficial, very supportive.
Oh, very grateful, very grateful. They, in particular, the psychology services that they've been offering, that's something that I had to avail myself of following a few years ago now, but it really started my journey to getting better myself, and that's of course thanks to the free psychology that Soldier On offered at that time. And the importance of that is it just took away all of the barriers for me. I could just go and get the help and start the journey of getting the help that I needed in the easiest possible way.
Soldier On has been good for helping me and like other veterans who have left our services, you know, voluntarily, not by our choice, but helping us to find new careers like through the Pathways program.
So for him, continuing to share his story, continuing to help other people and other veterans in particular, help people, you know, he started his own PT business to help people be the best versions of themselves.
So bear coaching is about focusing on back to the bare basics, so good diet, good movement, like good natural movement, so the squat, the hinge, the push, the pull, the press, like all the basic movements and how you can focus on doing them properly. So your diet and the basic mentality, so you have the right mindset to help you then get back on to overcome whatever burden you have put in front of yourself. I have used my resilience, you have resilience too, like it's inside you. You need to find out what you're going to fight for to recover and overcome those hurdles that's in front of you. I went to the Orlando Invictus Games and had to go rowing. I finished about half pack, which is some pretty. These guys have been training for a long time, so they have a lot more skills than the rower than I am. So on top of like the rowing, I also competed in the seated discus and the seated shot put. At the end of my discus heat, they go, "Hey Gary, hang around for a sec." I'm like, "What have I done wrong?" They go, "You won a medal." I'm like, "Nah, come on, stop pulling my leg." What happened? They said, "No, you won bronze." It's like, yeah, right. And it was so shocking even for me. Like the head coach went over to the families on the stand. He goes, "Did you say Gary wasn't won a medal?" And they're like, "What?" I then got involved with the Veterans Motorcycle Club, and we go riding together, and there's a bunch of old veterans and all of our loud, obnoxious Harleys together, and just the normality of riding a motorbike again. And albeit it's a Harley, but they've grown on me, so it's good. I'm not very big, but it's loud and obnoxious, and I'm sure Renee will agree that that's two of my traits that match.
If I was to sum up the last few years, I would say that we are back on track with where we wanted to be.
Abby Lockie, 2 minutes.
Now, like Karen, yours, hope? You do.
Don't forget my coffee. Love you too.
Gary's attitude to life and to his family is infectious. His passion just for life and for recovery, family, is obvious to anyone who comes into contact with them.
Hey.
Hi, Daddy.
Love you. It's really special having the kids, and because after the crash, I first thought I've learned how to run again because I may never be able to run after my kids, and now I'm glad I can actually get up and walk around because, as you've seen, they're very hectic little kids, and I always run around after them, chasing them down and playing with them. So be as mobile as I am now compared to what it could have been, and chasing them around and playing with them, so it's good fun.
Can't get me. I'm too high up.
I know that he's extremely lucky to be alive. Unfortunately, 3 of his mates and an American aircrew didn't survive that crash, but how anyone survived that impact is a mystery to me. But Gary was certainly very banged up, and I won't say that I didn't expect him to come through that, but I'm very pleased that he did.
Pretty much every day I remind myself how grateful I am that not only are the kids here, because otherwise, you know, those 2 people in who they are and what they do wouldn't have otherwise existed. I look at him and I'm grateful for him, and I'm grateful for our lives because I know what it could have been. It could have been me in 100% carer role, looking after him. We could have, you know, had no kids, you know, we just would have had a very different life. And so I remind myself every day, when I have this life, when I have the job that I have, when I'm able to do things for myself that fulfill myself, how grateful I am for that opportunity, because it could have very well been just completely the opposite.
I know there's not enough words to say thank you for all the support I've had through my whole recovery, to everyone involved, and even like saying thank you to Soldier on Life by continuing to support them as much as like they've supported me by helping them the way they help support other veterans as well. So it's been great. There's always going to be more veterans that need help, and we need to keep the support going as best we can.